Hello everyone, those of you on YouTube. We're broadcasting late because we've just done the Dhammapada. And I was going to turn all this off first, so excuse me. Many things to turn off. That's it. With me is Robin. Thank you for joining me, Robin, as usual.
Thank you, Bhante.
And I think we have some questions.
We do. This one goes back to last night, just before we signed off. It is easy to stay mindful during the gross sensations, but when subtle sensations come, desire to let them continue arises. How to understand dukkha in such situations?
Is that the suffering there is that they can't satisfy you. Suffering there is that they are not happiness. Truly the suffering there is in the awareness of them as it's not a positive thing, it's a not happiness thing. So when you're mindful of them, you'll see instantly that they won't even it's not an intellectual thing. You'll just feel the peace and you won't see it as happiness. Or you'll see the happiness and won't see it as happiness. I mean, as pleasant. You won't have any liking for it. Remember, the three characteristics are negatives. They're not positive qualities. Anicca means it's not permanent. Dukkha means it's not happiness. Or even if we want to go in more detail, it's you can't fix it. You can't. There's nothing to be. It's not a refuge. It's not a base. It's not something you can use to satisfy you, for example. But in general, it's not happiness. That's the meaning. And anatta means it's not self. It's not controllable. It's not you. It's not yours. That kind of thing. So if you say to yourself, liking, or feeling, or happy, you'll see, you'll just let go of it immediately. Because once you see it clearly, you see there's really nothing inherently positive about it.
Bhante Sujato of the Ajahn Chah group once mentioned that the biggest eater in the world is time, but the arahant eats time itself. In what sense does he eat it? Thank you, Bhante.
You have to ask Bhante Sujato, I don't know. I mean, arahant has attained enlightenment, and nibbana is out of time, is timeless. So that's probably what he's referring to.
If the Buddha was omniscient, why didn't he make scientific discoveries like discovering the law of electromagnetism to make technology and improve people's lives?
You really think electromagnetism has improved people's lives? I think there's a lot of it's funny. I mean, it's not really a. I'm not really impressed by the. It sounds so awful, no? It's not a great question. Sorry to say. Because why? There are so many things that you could say help people, right? I mean, even I think better than that example would be medicinal discoveries, right? Why didn't the Buddha tell us about penicillin, for example, right? Or give any number of things? And I mean, there's an argument to be made there, but even that is not a very, right? It's not a very deep question, or the answer is because those are not very deep, profound benefits. It doesn't really benefit people to have computers or and so on. What benefits people is meditation, and so that's what the Buddha taught. Right, it's a reasonable question. I shouldn't. I'm not really trying to discount it, but you have to understand. It's not really. It's on a whole other level. The Buddha's teaching is something quite different. It's like, why didn't the Buddha? If I were to ask you, why didn't the Buddha act as a doctor? Why didn't he cure people's sicknesses, right? Why didn't he help Anathapindika get his money back? Why didn't he go around telling the kings how to run? Why didn't he run for government? Why didn't the Buddha stay as a prince to rule his kingdom? And the answer is all the same. So I mean, and the answer is, I think, fairly obvious. I guess there's something a little bit more to your question, and it's more the simplicity of just telling people, right? But the answer is still stands, and it's that I suppose twofold. First of all, it's a waste of time that could be better used teaching. But it's also a distraction. So not only did he have better things to teach, but if you start teaching people about technology, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, suppose the Buddha had taught about electromagnetism. I mean, this is assuming he is omniscient, and I know there's a lot of criticism of that claim. So, I mean, I'm not in a place to say either way, but assuming he was omniscient, and it's not really omniscient either. You have to understand what omniscience means. Omniscience means, in Buddhism, it's not possible to be omniscient. But what is possible is that any question you put to your mind, the answer comes immediately. So, I mean, probably a simpler answer to your question would be, he would never have thought to ask the question. But not only would he have never thought to himself, hey, what is electromagnetism? He also wouldn't have had any interest in going there, because he had clear knowledge of what was of benefit. And so if he had gone out of his way to try to figure out, how to make an iPad, imagine what that would have done. What a distraction that would have been if he had explained about electromagnetism, or even penicillin, which would have saved people and helped people. The distraction that it would have provided. I'll give you an example. There's this monk who lives in California who's spent a lot of his time giving people, providing people with cures to their sicknesses. And he apparently has some kind of magical power. I mean, he's very famous. And he was able to build a very beautiful monastery in California just because of his renown. And I've been critical of him because it's not really proper for monks to provide medical advice. We're actually forbidden to do it, and it's for this sort of reason. And also for the reason that then people expect it from monks, and other monks who are practicing and teaching meditation have difficulty, but mostly because it just distracts people away from meditation. And that's exactly what's happened. Apparently someone came to him and asked him, why don't you teach meditation? And he said, well, I would like to, but I have so many people coming to me now that, and everyone's just coming because they want their sicknesses cured. And people are always coming for medicine, and so he has no time to teach. And so even curing people's sicknesses would have a deleterious effect on one's ability to teach. It would make things worse, not better, ironically. So I guess it was an interesting question, some interesting discussion. I hope that helped to answer. Apologize. I don't mean, I often feel like I'm quite negative about these questions, and it's important to be sensitive to the fact that there are people out there who hear you say, that's a stupid question. Not really stupid. It's just we have to be strict about this. We have to get to the truth of it. So I apologize if sometimes it sounds like I'm being hard on you.
Thank you, Bhante. Is it normal to separate your mind from your body when you meditate? I ask because today something very odd happened. I viewed myself after meditation as someone else. In other words, I existed in my mind, but I viewed my body as something completely different. I can only describe it like my body is a suit that I wear each day. For the record, I don't drink or take drugs, and as far as I know, I'm completely sane. It felt really peculiar. Is this normal?
Insane people think they're completely sane. Which is interesting because I would say we're all a little bit insane, just different degrees of insanity, until you become an arahant who would be completely sane. But that's, I think, neither here nor there. It is quite common, relatively speaking, which, common would be there, if I had to guess, maybe 1 in 100 meditators. This is 1 in 100 people who do serious meditation, which I think is pretty common. It's probably even more common than that. But for the rest of you who are thinking, why doesn't that happen to me? Well, it's not that common. Depends on the individual. But I've heard many stories like this, and yeah, it happens. But my teacher once told a story about this monk who left his body, and he was wont to do this, so his students didn't know it, and one day they came in to see him and found that he wasn't responsive, and they called to him and he didn't move. And so he didn't extrapolate on it, but they gave him an injection. And I'm assuming it wouldn't have been an injection of formaldehyde, like they thought he was dead. But they gave him some kind of injection. And because of the injection, he couldn't come back. I think they must have felt the pulse, right? He wasn't dead, so there would have still been a pulse. But they thought he was in a coma or something. And so they brought the doctor, and the doctor gave him an injection. And because of whatever the injection was, he wasn't able to come back. And so he was trying to get back into his body, and he wasn't able to connect again, which was interesting. And so Ajahn said, it's better not to play with it, but if you have to, you need to put a sign up or something. I'm still alive, leave me alone. But he said, my Ajahn said, when it happens, you should just say, come back, coming coming back, and make yourself come back, kind of thing. And it's dangerous, he said.
It's probably a good lesson too. If you come upon someone meditating, don't inject them with anything.
Yeah, he mentioned that. I mean, that happens in our tradition because we, there's the entering into cessation, and people can do that for hours as well. There's one nun who was very good at it, but to this day, I don't think it really was what she thought it was, because she was one of the most foul-mouthed beings I've ever met. She would yell at people and scold them, and I saw her kill a mosquito once as well, so I don't think she was actually enlightened in any way. But she was able to enter into these trance states on will just in a few seconds, and she thought it was enlightenment. So, but they could, you could pick her up when she was in this state. You could pick her up and turn her around, and she would be stiff, and you could pick her up. And when she came back, she wouldn't have any recollection of it, I think.
And with that, we're all caught up on questions.
Okay. Good night. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Robin, for joining.
Thank you, Bhante.
Good night.
Good night.